Next witness.
Statement call Jordan Clark.
Here, sir. Raise your right hand. You promise testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth. See? Shut that door, please.
Is the court ready?
Yeah, I just want to get that door shut. We're getting noise from outside.
Yes, Your Honor.
But proceed.
Thank you. Sir, if you could please state your first and last name and spell them both for the record.
Jordan Clark, Jordan, and Clark.
And Mr. Clark, how old are you, sir?
24.
And how far in school did you go?
12th grade.
Did you graduate?
Yes.
And so you're a high school graduate?
Yes.
Any schooling past high school?
No.
Any trade school or anything like that?
No.
Where do you live?
In Charles City?
And is that in northeast Iowa?
Yes.
Who do you live with?
Parents?
And what is your occupation, sir?
Currently self-employed.
Okay. What type of work do you do normally?
Be a mechanic?
Did you work for the same company?
No.
So what kind of trucking or hauling were you doing when you met Mr. Cohn?
Chickens.
Was he hauling live chickens as well?
Yes.
How would that work? How would you encounter him when you were loading chickens?
Just wait time while each trailer would get loaded.
So is it fair to say that you would arrive at the same farm at the same time and sometime you had to wait for your turn to load the chickens?
Yes.
And was there time that you would talk to the other drivers?
Yes.
Is that how you met Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
What month do you think it was and year that you met Mr. Cohn?
Probably April, May-ish of 2017.
April or March of 2017?
Yes.
Did you become friends with Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
How often would you run into him at work?
Usually every day.
And that's every work day?
Yes.
And was it the same places you run into him at farms where you were both there to pick up chickens to take to the processing plant?
Correct.
And so how many days of work did you Excuse me, let me start over. How many days per week did you work?
5.
And would you see Mr. Cohn in the months of April, May, June, July, and August about 5 times a week?
If not 5, 4 to 5 probably.
Did you know that he had a child, a little girl?
Yes.
And did you learn that from him?
Yes.
Did you know that he had a child, a baby boy?
No.
When you were at those farms with Mr. Cohn, would you use drugs with him?
Yes.
Now, sir, do you have a problem with using drugs?
Not anymore.
Did you have a problem?
Yes.
What type of drugs did you use?
Meth.
How long did you use meth?
About a year and a half.
When did you start?
Probably would have been July, August prior to, would have been 2016.
Did it become a problem?
Yes.
Affect your life?
Yes.
How so?
Just essentially at the time it cost job, marriage, everything.
How often would you use meth?
Daily.
When you were with Mr. Cohn those 4 or 5 times a week for those months between April and August, did you use meth with him every time you were with him at those work sites?
Yes.
Did you ever go to the apartment in Alta Vista where Cheyenne Harris lived with Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
When did you go there first?
Probably around July, August, July I'd say.
Of 2017?
Yes.
How many times total did you go to that apartment in Alta Vista where the defendant lived with her live-in boyfriend, Mr. Cohn?
2, maybe 3 times.
When you went to that apartment, was it a 2-bedroom apartment?
I believe so, yes.
Did you ever go into the bedroom that Cheyenne and Zach Cohn shared?
Yes.
Why'd you go in there?
Basically just to do drugs away from the little girl.
Did you ever go in the other room, the other bedroom, I should say, in that apartment?
No.
When you went in that bedroom to use drugs away from the little girl, what drugs were you using?
Meth.
How were you ingesting it?
Smoke.
Who else in that apartment was using meth with you?
Everyone.
Who is that?
Would be Zachary and Cheyenne.
So Miss Harris, the defendant, used meth?
Yes.
How did she ingest it?
And smoke as well.
Who brought the meth?
Usually it was there, otherwise I did once.
And you said you were at that apartment 2 or 3 times?
Yes.
Did you use meth with Miss Harris, the defendant, at that apartment the 3 times you were there?
No.
How many times did you use meth with her at the apartment?
Once for sure, possibly twice. I can't remember exactly.
Was that the only drug that you observed Miss Harris using at the apartment?
Yes.
And is the only location in that apartment where you smoked the methamphetamine in the bedroom shared by the defendant and Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Where was Nala when you were using the meth?
Usually she was running or playing out in the living room or...
Just a few feet away?
Yes.
When you were in that apartment, did you know there was a baby in that apartment?
No.
Did you ever see the door to that back bedroom open where the not the parents' bedroom but the other door?
Not that I can recall.
When you were at that apartment, did Miss Harris ever mention that there was a baby in that apartment?
Not that I recall 100%.
Did you ever see a baby in that apartment?
No.
Did you ever see anybody go in the back room and check on the baby?
I can't say for certain, but not that I can recall.
When you were at that apartment, what was Nala doing?
Usually playing, running around.
Did you see the defendant, Miss Harris, interact and engage with Nala?
Yes.
Describe what you saw.
Happy.
Who was happy?
Cheyenne and Nala.
Did Cheyenne play with Nala?
Yes.
Did you provide any care for Nala?
Yes.
What did you see?
Seen get food ready for her and essentially take care of her.
Did Nala appear healthy?
Yes.
Did she appear happy?
Yes.
Did she appear to be well nourished?
Yes.
And you said you saw Cheyenne actually prepare food and give it to Nala?
Yes.
Did Nala appear to be well nourished?
Yes.
Was she clean?
Yeah.
Properly clothed?
Yes.
When you said you went to the apartment and you used drugs, you said that there were some drugs already in the apartment that you used, and maybe one time you brought drugs, correct?
Correct.
Do you know how Mr. Cohn and Miss Harris got the methamphetamines that they used?
No.
Do you know how they paid for the drugs that they were using?
No, I do not.
Did you get methamphetamine from Mr. Cohn?
At times, yes.
Did he pay you?
At times, yes.
Okay. At some times, did Mr. Cohn buy drugs from you?
Yes.
And you sold him drugs?
Yes.
How much did you sell him?
Maybe a handful of times. I can't really say for certain.
Did he buy drugs from you? Excuse me, did you buy drugs from him?
On a couple occasions, yes.
And how many times do you think you bought drugs from him?
Maybe 3 to 4 times.
And how much would you buy every time you bought drugs from him?
About the same, $20 to $40 worth.
How much methamphetamine can you get for $20 or $40?
Maybe a half gram.
And how much is a half gram? How many people can get high off a half gram of meth?
I'd say probably one, maybe two.
How did you learn that Cheyenne Harris, the defendant in this case, had a baby boy who had died?
The morning, or the August morning, I should say, that Zach had called basically to find someone to work his shift that day.
Is that when you learned for the first time that the defendant, Miss Harris, was the mother of a baby boy?
Yes.
How many hours total do you think you spent in that apartment with Miss Harris and Mr. Cohn?
Altogether, maybe 4 to 6.
And during that whole time, you never saw anybody care for her death on August 30th, 2017. Did you have any type of romantic relationship with the defendant, Cheyenne Harris?
No.
After Sterling died, did you develop a relationship with her?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Just from texting back and forth, kind of. One thing led to another.
When did it happen?
Probably mid-September.
And was Miss Harris still together with Mr. Cohn?
I believe so, yes.
Did you meet up with Cheyenne and have sex with her?
Yes.
More than once?
Yes.
Did Mr. Cohn know about it?
After the fact, yes, I believe so.
Did she make efforts to hide it from him before he found out?
I think so, yes.
How did he find out, Mr. Cohn?
I'm not sure.
After he found out, did he and Miss Harris stay together?
I believe somewhat, yes.
Now, to be clear, your relationship with Miss Harris continues to right now, right?
Yes.
How would you describe your current relationship with Miss Harris?
Essentially the same as it was. Kind of much as it can be, I should say.
Now, you write and text her, right?
Correct.
Do you tell her in your writings and texts that you love her?
Yes.
Do you tell her that you want to be with her?
Yes.
Does she say that she loves you
Yes.
and she wants to be with you?
Yes.
Do you exchange sexually explicit?
Finish the question.
Do you exchange sexually explicit text messages with her?
Sustained.
Your texting and writing, Miss Harris, that continues up till the present time, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, sir. That's all the questions I have.
Cross-examination. Can this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
You are free to leave, sir.
Thank you.
State's next witness.
Sheila Shroeder.
That's fine. Feel free to stand and stretch if you want, ladies and gentlemen. Raise your right hand. You promise testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Have a seat. Proceed, Mr. McAllister.
Thank you. If you could please state your first and last name and spell them both for the record.
Sheila Shroeder, Sheila Shroeder.
And how are you employed?
With the Department of Human Services.
And can you just describe for the jury what is the Department of Human Services and what is your specific role at the Department of Human Services?
The Department of Human Services also in Child Welfare Services.
And what exactly are your day-to-day duties as a child protection worker?
I'm assigned intakes that come from the Child Abuse Hotline for dependent adults and for children.
Can you outline for the jury kind of a thumbnail sketch of your educational background that gave you the skill set to be a child protective worker?
I have a bachelor's degree in human services, and I have approximately 20 years experience in the human service field.
And can you tell us, Ms. Schroeder, how it is that DHS gets involved in a particular matter where there's an allegation of either child abuse or neglect?
Persons make reports to the child abuse hotline, the dependent adult hotline. That information is screened through an intake process and then either accepted or not for abuse.
And if they're accepted, what happens?
It's assigned to workers such as myself, where we conduct interviews and make determinations.
Now, in this case, to be clear, I'm not going to ask you about any determinations you made. I just want to talk about your process and what you did, okay? How was it that you became involved in looking into the circumstances surrounding the death of Sterling Cohn?
I was assigned the child protective worker once it was accepted, and I conducted interviews with the parents.
Okay, and did that include an interview of Ms. Harris, the mother of Sterling Cohn?
Yes.
In addition to talking to Ms. Harris, did you have an opportunity to physically and visually interact with their daughter, Nala Cohn?
Yes, I did.
And your report says that that occurred on September 1st, 2017. Is that right?
Yes.
And would that be 2 days after Sterling was found dead at the apartment in Alta Vista?
Yes.
Where was it that you interacted with Nala on September 1st, 2017?
I met with her at the foster home.
And can you describe Nala, how she appeared to you?
When I met and observed Nala, basically she was nonverbal. She didn't use her words. Her appearance seemed not typical of a child her age. She appeared healthy to me.
Did she appear to be well-nourished or well-fed?
By appearances, she did, yes.
Did you have any concerns in looking at her body, whether or not she had been the victim of any physical maltreatment?
I had no concerns with that, no.
Now, she's kind of been described in this case by other witnesses as a chubby or chunky. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would.
Did she appear to be appropriate in size for her stated age of 20 months?
Yes, she did.
Now, you also mentioned that as part of your work in this matter, you're looking into the death of Sterling Cohn, that you interviewed the defendant, Cheyenne Harris, correct?
Yes.
When did that occur?
On September 1st.
And why was it that you wanted to speak to Ms. Harris?
Part of the assessment process that we do interview parents.
And what were you hoping to learn in speaking to Ms. Harris?
By seeking information about Sterling's death and how she cared for Nala and Sterling, including a timeline and just general information about the family and the parents and the children.
And how was it that you were able to arrange a meeting with Ms. Harris on September 1st, 2017?
I initiated phone calls to Cheyenne and her partner. There were several phone calls back and forth before we arranged a meeting that day.
Was it your preference to meet over the phone or in person?
In person.
And why was that?
Interviews conducted in person, you're able to gather more information, and it's just generally a better interview.
How would you characterize in your interaction setting up the interview with Ms. Harris her willingness to meet with you that day?
I would characterize the efforts that I made as diligent. Cheyenne and her partner, it was a difficult conversation. There were several phone calls back and forth before the couple agreed to meet with me.
And did they ultimately agree to meet with you?
Yes, they did.
Who set the location for the meeting?
The couple decided where they wanted to meet with me.
And did you honor their request?
Yes, I did.
And where did you agree to meet with them?
At the public library in Osage.
And is that a community that's in a neighboring county, the Chickasaw County?
Yes, I believe so.
I didn't mean to give you a geography lesson. I'm sorry. And your report says that you met with the couple on September 1st of 2017 at about 2:45 p.m. Is that what you recall?
Yes.
When you met with Cheyenne Harris, did you get a chance to observe her demeanor, her appearance, her mood?
Yes, I did.
And how would you describe her demeanor during your interactions with her?
When I met with Cheyenne, she provided information regarding the situation. She was tearful at times, but I do believe she was engaged in the interview.
Did she, based on your interactions with her, did you form the opinion that she could comprehend the questions that you were asking?
Yes.
Did she provide information that was consistent to be responsive to your questioning?
Yes, she did.
And you said she was engaged. What do you mean by that?
She was making eye contact with me. She was answering the questions that I was asking. I believe she was thoughtful in her answers as she was consistent throughout the interview.
Did you have any concerns that Ms. Harris was under the influence of any drugs or medications or alcohol when you met with her?
No, I did not.
How long approximately did you meet with Ms. Harris?
I don't recall a specific time. Generally, when I meet with parents for the types of questions I was asking, it's about an hour.
Now, you had testified a moment ago that your purpose in interviewing Ms. Harris was to obtain information, right?
Yes.
Now, your report says that the parents provided information on their terms, doesn't it?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
When I was asking questions and gathering information, there were times when I was asked to refer to law enforcement for those questions because they had already been answered.
What do you mean?
Her partner just talked about the things that I was asking had already been answered by law enforcement, and it didn't seem that they would wanted to talk about those things a second time with me.
Did you ask Ms. Harris, the defendant in this case, to explain why she believed Sterling had died on August 30th, 2017?
Yes, I talked with her about that.
And what did she tell you?
Her partner had indicated that the child had died from SIDS, and she agreed with that statement.
What is SIDS?
Sudden infant death syndrome.
Was Ms. Harris able to provide any alternate explanation for Sterling's death in your conversation with her on September 1st, 2017?
No, she did not.
Did you ask Ms. Harris to describe what had happened in the time leading up to Sterling's death?
Yes, I did.
And why did you do that?
It's important to have a timeline of events when there's been maltreatment of a child, including a death.
And what did she tell you in response to you asking her to describe the events in the time leading up to Sterling's death?
She was not specific in times when she had last fed him or bathed him, is what I recall.
Did she say that she was the last one to see Sterling alive?
I believe that was discussed, and her partner indicated she was the last one to see him alive, and she did not disagree with that.
Was she able to describe how much and how often she had been feeding Sterling in the hours and days prior to his death?
She did offer that information to me, and it was very non-specific in the 24 hours, his last 24 hours of life.
Did you ask her how often Sterling was bathed?
Yes, I did.
And what was her response?
I recall her telling me about every 3 days.
Every 3 days? Is that what you said?
That's what I recall, yes.
Did you ask her to describe how it was that she bathed Sterling?
I recall Cheyenne explaining that she used a bucket to wash him with.
And about every 3 days?
Yes.
Did Miss Harris describe the last days of Sterling's life as normal or something else?
I recall her saying pretty normal.
Could she point to any health concerns or concerns about Sterling's physical appearance or condition in general that she identified in the last hours or days of his life?
I recall Cheyenne talking about him having diarrhea, but not specific to the last day or a specific time that had occurred.
Did you ask Miss Harris if Sterling had received any medical care or had attended any well child visits with a doctor's office subsequent to his birth?
We talked about his general medical care, and she indicated, what I recall is that he had not been back to the doctor since his birth.
And do I understand that she was not able to identify any health concerns that she had noticed concerning Sterling?
Yes.
What was Miss Harris's occupation? What did she tell you about that?
That she stayed at home and cared for the children.
So she was a stay-at-home mom?
Yes.
What did you learn from Miss Harris about who was the person responsible for feeding Sterling?
I believe she said she limited the people who cared for her children, and that she was the primary caretaker for those duties.
Did Mr. Cohn, was he a person that Miss Harris said provided feedings for Sterling?
I don't recall specifically what she told me about him and his role, other than he didn't change diapers and he didn't bathe the children.
So she was responsible for that?
Yes.
Did you inquire as to Miss Harris's mental health needs?
Yes, I screened that when I asked the questions.
And what do you mean you screened that?
We talk about any diagnoses that they have, or any concerns that they have with their mental health, or any medications that they may be taking.
Did she express to you or claim that she had any current symptoms of depression when you met with her on September 1st, 2017?
I don't recall her identifying specific symptoms, although her making a statement that she had depression.
And when she reported having a history of depression, did she say when that had occurred?
No, she did not.
Did you screen Miss Harris for the use of any illegal drugs or medications?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
It's part of our assessment process and gathering information.
Why would the Department of Human Services be concerned with a parent who is using illegal drugs?
Because it affects their parenting ability and how they provide care to their child.
How so?
For example, if they're using a mood-altering substance, something illegal, they may neglect their child, not feed them, not change their diaper, not tend to their basic needs.
When you screened Miss Harris for her use of illegal drugs, did you ask her about her illegal drug use?
Yes, I did.
And what was her response?
It was learned through the interview that she used methamphetamine approximately 1 week before Sterling's death.
And the 1 week before Sterling's death time frame for using methamphetamines, who provided that time frame?
I believe Cheyenne did.
And did she tell you how it was that she ingested the methamphetamine?
I believe this discussion was that she had smoked it.
At the time that you met with the parents of Sterling Cohn, the defendant, Ms. Harris, and Zachary Cohn, had Nala been placed in foster care?
Yes.
And had Nala been removed from the care of Ms. Harris?
Yes, she had.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Cross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. When you were trying to make contact with Ms. Harris and Mr. Cohn, were you receiving phone calls back and forth from both of them, or was it primarily Mr. Cohn, Zach?
I believe they shared a phone, and when they would call me back, they would be on the phone together.
You talked to them, they agreed to meet with you, and you spoke with them both together, is that right?
Yes.
What was Mr. Cohn's demeanor?
He shared the same as Cheyenne. They were reluctant initially to commit to meeting with me that day.
Did he laugh during your interview with him?
During the interview, he did laugh.
Okay, and did you characterize him as being dismissive?
I did.
Okay. In contrast, Ms. Harris was tearful throughout the interview?
Yes, she was.
And during that interview, did she often apologize for Mr. Cohn's behavior?
She provided an explanation as to why he was laughing.
You testified that you didn't have a concern that she was under the influence at the time that you were talking to her, but based on your interview, did you have a concern about her past methamphetamine use?
Yes.
And how that might affect her ability to parent?
Yes.
And in fact, that is sadly a common occurrence that DHS runs across, fair?
Yes.
And it sounds like at times in this conversation, Mr. Cohn would offer an explanation and Ms. Harris would agree with it. For example, the idea of it maybe being SIDS, correct?
I agree with the SID statement, yes.
So he puts it out there that it might be SIDS and she simply agreed with it. Fair?
She did, yes.
The idea that she was not able to provide specific times of feedings and those sorts of things, that would be consistent with methamphetamine use?
Could be, yes.
And that, as I understand it, is part of the problem with methamphetamine, as you testified earlier, is it affects their ability to parent. Fair?
Yes.
And they may neglect their child's needs.
Yes.
She did relate to you that she had suffered from depression. Fair enough?
She reported that she had depression, yes.
Yeah. And when she talked to you about her methamphetamine use, when you're talking to parents, in your experience, is it fair to say that oftentimes families don't always want DHS involved in their life?
Yes.
Okay. And to have a certain amount of reluctance there is not particularly unusual, is it?
It's not.
Okay. And in your experience, especially when you're talking with parents who are now kind of under the microscope about how they were dealing with their children, it's not unusual for somebody to minimize their drug use, correct?
Yes.
Did you record the conversation on audio or video that you had with Mr. Cohen and Ms. Harris?
No.
Thank you, ma'am. I have nothing further.
Redirect.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, ma'am. First of all, you said that Ms. Harris offered an explanation for Mr. Cohn's laughter. What was that?
And he laughs when he's nervous.
My next question has to do with parents that meet with you that might be nervous that you may use information to perhaps their detriment, right?
Can you repeat the last two words?
Well, when you say that sometimes parents are reluctant to be straightforward with you, that's because you have the authority to remove children from parents' care, right?
Yes, I make that application to the court, yes.
And as you sit here now, you don't know if Ms. Harris was minimizing her illegal drug use, do you?
I do not.
And if she did minimize her illegal drug use, that would be a rational choice that she made, correct?
Yes.
And she would have made that on September 1st, 2017 when she sat down and talked to you, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Recross.
Nothing further. Thank you.
This witness can be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may step down. You're free to leave. Next witness.
certifications.
You also teach as well, is that right?
Yes,
What do you teach?
primarily interview and interrogation.
And I'd like to talk to you about August 30th, 2017. You were called out to assist with an infant death investigation.
Yes,
Do you have experience working infant death cases?
yes.
Are you able to say how many cases that you've worked?
No, but I started assisting on those types of cases from the beginning of my career and have been a lead investigator on a number of those throughout my career, several a year.
All right, tell us how you were contacted.
So on Wednesday, August 30th, 2017, I was actually at a zone meeting along with the other agents in my area in Cedar Falls, and I was advised by my supervisor that there had been a request for assistance with an infant death from the Chickasaw County Sheriff's Office.
Did you receive a specific assignment for that case?
I was pretty early on designated as what we would call the case agent for the DCI.
And case agent is what?
That's our designation, so when we are called to assist another agency, that person would be the primary point of contact for local law enforcement. So I would work with a counterpart from the Chickasaw County Sheriff's Office in assessing what needs they have and helping them by providing our resources.
Right, so where did you go to?
I drove straight to the Chickasaw County Sheriff's Office in New Hampton.
Do you know about what time you arrived?
About 2:45 p.m. that afternoon.
And who did you meet with when you arrived?
Chickasaw County Sheriff's Chief Deputy Reed Palo, and then we had also sent two other DCI agents to assist. That would be Special Agent Jim Teal and Special Agent Chris Calloway.
Who did you assign to do what?
So Chief Deputy Palo and I had met and talked about initial assignments. We had assigned Special Agent Jim Teal to write a search warrant, get it signed by a judge, and then begin to go process the scene where Sterling had been found. Special Agent Calloway was assigned to speak to the defendant. Chief Deputy Palo was going to stay at the Sheriff's Office for a while. There was a number of things that needed to be done there as well.
And what role did you take on?
I interviewed Zach Kane.
Where did you interview Zach Cohen at?
That was at the Sheriff's Office.
When you arrived at the Sheriff's Office, was Zach Cohen and the defendant already there, or did you have to wait for them to get there?
I don't recall when I pulled up if I passed them coming in, but at some point after I'd been there a short time, I was alerted that they were out in front of the Sheriff's Office and wanting to speak to someone.
So to be clear, when you spoke with Zach Cohen and Chris Calloway spoke with the defendant, neither one of you had been to the house to see the scene, is that right?
That's correct. We hadn't been to the scene yet.
All right, so how long did you speak with Zach Cohen?
I think the initial part of my time with him was about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Then there was a break, and then I executed a search warrant and had some other matters to take up with him. So several hours, I would say probably 3 hours or so that I spent with him at the Sheriff's Office.
What do you mean you executed a search warrant?
At some point, other officers had gotten a search warrant for his cell phone and also to, I believe, take some pictures and some things like that of him. So some things that we needed to take care of while he was still there.
Where did you interview Zach Cohen at?
There's a interview room just inside the Sheriff's Office. You go up a set of stairs and there's a room that we use for talking to people there.
And are you aware where Agent Calloway took the defendant, Cheyenne Harris?
Yes, there was only the one interview room, so he'd elected to just ask her to sit outside in his car. It was a pretty pleasant day, and so he offered to have her just sit in his car and talk to her there.
And I guess I should have asked that at the beginning. Were they required to talk to you?
No. We asked both of them if they'd be willing to speak with us, and they said yes.
All right, so following your interview with Zach Cohen, what did you do?
I would have touched base with Chief Deputy Palo, Special Agent Calloway, and then some point after we ended those things, I would have gone to the scene where Sterling was found.
And what did you do there?
So I went inside. At that point, the search had already been underway. A search warrant was being conducted there by Special Agent Teal. There was a deputy there already. And so at that point, after I was shown the apartment, generally then I assisted with the completion of that search warrant.
How long were you at the residence that day?
I think when it was all said and done, I was there for several hours, maybe a couple hours or so.
What time did you finally leave?
I don't recall. It was well into the evening at the point when I left and went back to Dubuque.
All right, in the following days, did you do anything to continue with the investigation?
Yes. So that first night, Chief Deputy Palo and I had again discussed what needed to be done. And so the autopsy had been scheduled that next day. So Chief Deputy Palo attended that, and then there was a number of other investigative items that needed follow-up, some additional interviews, search warrants for records, those types of things.
Was there a time later that week that you saw the defendant, Cheyenne Harris, and Zach Cohen again?
Yes, I saw him for the second time. It would have been 2 days later, that same week on Friday, September 1st.
And where did you see them at?
The Osage Public Library.
And why were you there?
So at that point, a judge had signed an order in which we were to get a buccal swab, which is a DNA sample from both the defendant and Zach Cohen. And so I had found out that a Department of Human Services worker was scheduled to meet with them that day. I inquired where that was going to happen, and so I went to that same location so I could meet them and get that buccal swab, that DNA sample as ordered.
Did you get the DNA sample before or after their interview with DHS?
I can't remember today how that happened. I believe it was after that, but I'm not sure.
Can you describe for us the encounter that you had with them?
So at some point I was in the Osage Public Library parking lot, and I identified that I could see the defendant and Zach Cohen in a vehicle, and so I got out of my vehicle, and they saw me as I was getting out of my vehicle.
And you had seen them 2 days before. They knew who you were.
I'd met both of them and talked to Zach extensively, but I'd also met the defendant.
So what happened?
So as I got out of my vehicle, they saw me and I saw them, and the defendant was driving the car, and she quickly started to maneuver the car to leave, to go away from me.
What did you do?
So I started to move and position myself and pulled my badge out and told them they needed to stop.
Did you get in front of the car?
I did have to. I was starting to move that direction and was close to getting in front of the car at the time that this was all happening.
And the defendant, Cheyenne Harris, was driving?
Yes.
Did she at some point then follow your instructions?
She did stop the car when she saw that I was getting in front of it, and then held my badge up and told them to stop.
So then what happened?
I was able to talk them out of the car. I explained to them, I showed them a copy of the search warrant, the order from the judge, and said, I'm going to need you to get out so I can execute this search warrant and take a buccal swab.
Now, without repeating anything that was said, what was Zach Cohen's demeanor like?
He was belligerent, angry.
What was the defendant's demeanor like?
Initially after I was able to get him out of the car, at some point she had decided that in fact they were going to have to comply with the judge's order, and so she did so.
Did you have any conversation with her?
Very little. I think I'd encouraged her to continue to talk to Special Agent Calloway if there was more to discuss, but other than that, it was just to gather the DNA sample from them.
And when you say gather a DNA sample, what did you do?
So a buccal swab is really what we carry is like a long Q-tip. They're in prepackaged wrapping, so we pull those out 2 at a time, and then with each individual you would swab the inside of their cheek for about 20 to 30 seconds, and then place that into an evidence box and seal it.
What did you do with those buccal swabs once you took them?
So they were bagged up and sealed, and then ultimately those were taken down to the DCI Criminalistics Laboratory.
And the DCI Criminalistics Laboratory is in Ankeny?
Yes.
Everyone? And they do the DNA testing there, correct?
Yes.
All right, following that day, what other types of things were you doing?
So there were follow-up interviews to do. I conducted some of those. Chief Deputy Palo went out and conducted some of those. I believe we did at least one of those together. There was search warrants to be written for various records, electronic data. That data had to then be looked at, and also beginning to gather other officers' reports that were involved in the case and make a master investigative report.
And you were talking about electronic data. We'd heard that the defendant's cell phone had been seized and a cell write was done, correct?
Yes.
Okay, was there something also to be done regarding any activity on certain sites?
So we had learned during the interviews and through other investigative leads that there were Facebook records for both the defendant and Zach Cohn.
And did you apply to get those Facebook records?
Yes, so we drafted a search warrant. A judge signed that search warrant. We send that off to Facebook, and then eventually we get those records back electronically.
And you did receive those?
Yes.
And during this time that you're doing the things you've just discussed, you're still at this point waiting for the medical examiner's report, correct?
Yes, that's one of the primary reasons we're continuing to wait. There are other things to do, but we were waiting for the final autopsy report from the medical examiner.
Your Honor, I have something that I need to bring up with the court out of the presence of the jury.
Should we take our mid-afternoon recess at this time?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that.
Rise for the jury.
I don't know how long it'll be because I don't know what we're going to talk about, so we'll come get you. It'll be at least 15 minutes.